Oh boy, here I go, talking about Star Trek again. I'm going to start spoiler-free just in case you haven't seen the first episode. I'll let you know when I start talking spoilers in this review. I'll give you major spoiler warnings. Picard premiered and somehow CBS didn't totally destroy it. And really quick, I just want to get out of the way. Yes, I know there's a lot of Star Wars stuff behind me. I understand that triggers a lot of people, but think about it this way. If I say anything that you don't agree with, you can cite that as evidence that I'm obviously not a Trekkie. Therefore, none of your views have to be challenged. So I decided to watch Picard. I tried to watch Discovery when it first premiered and it just was too awful. But Picard, I had to give a chance because I grew up watching it with my dad and brother. My mom was all about Voyager. I don't know why she didn't care about Next Generation. And everyone tries to say, oh, it's because it was a woman captain. No, I that definitely wasn't it. I just have no idea. Anyway, so I grew up with the Next Generation, and the Next Generation is what I think about when I think about Star Trek. Picard versus Kirk, fuck you. Picard all the way. So I knew I had to give this series a try because of how much I enjoyed watching the Next Generation with my dad, and brother too, but mostly dad. So imagine my shock when I watched the first episode of Picard, and they didn't totally destroy it. Now, CBS, if you watch Discovery and any of their more recent Star Trek stuff, seem to think that explosions and nonstop action is the way to go, which is absolutely not Star Trek, that's Star Wars. If you guys really have a boner for Star Wars, maybe just go over to Disney or something. So I was shocked with the minimal explosions in the first episode of Picard. Though I do have to give CBS a hand because they finally agreed with a point I made in an earlier video. By the time of the Star Trek shows, Earth has united and has eliminated warfare, poverty, disease, and hunger.
Money doesn't exist in the 24th century.
No money? You mean you don't get paid?
The acquisition of wealth is no longer the driving force in our lives. We work to better ourselves and the rest of humanity.
So, it's a pretty boring place. Thank you, CBS. I'm glad you agree with me. So I would say if you like The Next Generation or Picard at all, maybe you watch the movies. I don't know why you would watch the movies with Picard but not the series, but I don't know your life. I would say give this series a try. Watch the first episode, see how you like it, and go from there. That's all I'm gonna give you for spoiler free because I really don't want to continue talking about this without spoilers. So my suggestion is if you haven't watched the first episode, just try it out and see if you like it. If not, I don't know, just go about your life. It's like an hour of your life. Are you really spending it doing anything that important? Probably not. Okay, so spoilers. First off, I'm not a fan of the theme song and the visuals they used. The theme song was so underwhelming. I thought for Picard it was going to, not that it was going to be like this insane action-packed intro, but something a little deeper and more meaningful. Even the visuals and then Picard at the end of the intro, I was like, ew. You guys could have done a lot better. Now, I never imagined Picard leaving Starfleet, regardless of other people did. He just reminded me of the type of guy that would die at his post, so I was intrigued what would make Picard leave Starfleet. And him leaving over moral issues, to me, is a good reason. Unlike another franchise. And if you aren't aware, and it's perfectly fine if you don't, because of the events of the 2009 Star Trek movie, we essentially have two different timelines. So the movies are the Kelvin timeline, and that's when Romulus was destroyed. Nero has a mental breakdown. He ends up going back in time. He destroys the planet Vulcan, and then that timeline, the Kelvin timeline, the Star Trek movie timeline, Starfleet's a little more aggressive about developing weapons, and the the world's a little bit more scary of a place. The universe is a little bit more scary of a place. Now, the TV shows follow going forward from Romulus being destroyed. So obviously in their timeline, Nero didn't go back and destroy Vulcan. Hopefully that's not confusing. I understand just saying the words out of my mouth, it might seem a little bit weird, but yeah. The show follows the timeline of what we heard the backstory of in the Star Trek movie where the supernova Romulus was destroyed. And we figure out in the TV series in that timeline, I don't know what we're calling that timeline. The prime timeline, I think, is what we went with. I have a video on it. Got a lot of death threats on that video. It was weird because I thought Star Wars fans were supposed to be the sexist, bigots. But I learned on that video it's actually Trekkies. I've never gotten that many death and rape threats from Star Wars fans as I did from Trekkies. All on a timeline video. So in the prime timeline, we have Jean-Luc Picard, who wants to rescue as many Romulans as possible before the supernova happens and the planet is destroyed. And since the Romulans have been the enemies of Starfleet, the Federation, for a really long time, some people feel like, that's not proper use of our resources, but Picard, a very moral individual, and he goes, no, this is absolutely what we need to do. We need to rescue these people. And while this does perfectly fit into the Star Trek universe and lore that we have for it, what I really like is it's also kind of a mirror to our own world. Even though we're obviously just one planet and one species, we're still really, really fucking awful. So, for example, 9/11 happened in America. Non-American people, you've probably heard about it because it's caused so many issues going forward. So 9/11 happens, and then all of a sudden, Americans are, all Middle Eastern people are terrorists, and we put the actions of a minority as this is what they're all like. And so we see the same thing in the Star Trek world where the Romulans, not all Romulans cause some issues, so fuck everyone else. We shouldn't help any Romulan because we've had issues with them. Or groups of them. Now, it's not exactly a one-to-one comparison. Obviously, there's a lot of issues with it, but it is kind of holding up a mirror to our own world and how we try to clump people into groups and fuck them, we're not going to help them, they're all bad. But not only are we dealing with the prejudice against Romulans in the Star Trek universe, we're also dealing with now a prejudice with synthetics. So synthetics ended up doing a little mini rebellion. They ended up destroying all the aid ships that were above Mars. Mars is now even on fire 30 years later. 30 or 20 years later? I don't remember. I'm going to have to check my notes. But anyways, it's still on fire. So then they end up going, the Federation, Starfleet ends up going, okay, no more synthetics. We're shutting down this program. We obviously can't trust AI anymore, which is, keep saying mirror or a reflection, but you have to realize most shows are created to show something about our current world and current events. And so our fear right now in our world is AI. And some of the smartest people, some have recently died in the past couple of years, have said AI is one of the most, I'd say, scariest and most threatening thing to humanity, and we need to decide right now where we go with it. So we have really smart people saying AI could be potentially very dangerous for human beings. And then we also have, I didn't think when I was younger, when I read sci-fi books, that this would be such an issue, but having a YouTube channel and talking to so many different people, there are quite a few people that do not believe AI should ever be given the same rights as humans. And it's for a variety of reasons. Some people make it more of a religious thing of, well, they don't have souls, because obviously you can prove souls exist, and who has them or who doesn't, fuck you. My cats are going to heaven. So you would think that if something developed consciousness or became sentient, we would say, hey, you deserve the same rights as us. But even in our world, people have been, no, they never deserve equal rights. And you see that reflected in Star Trek as well. These synthetics had individual thought, and they planned, and that became too dangerous. And instead of giving them the right to live, it's, no, we're shutting them down. You don't have the same rights. And I can sort of understand it from their perspective, because they did have an issue with enhanced humans who ended up causing some problems. And I guess some other dude. I guess he was important too. And what's interesting in this show is we hear about Bruce Maddox, and if you watch The Next Generation, you know he was the guy that wanted to take apart Data to study him and figure out how to make more of him. So, kind of interesting that he's still around, even though he's missing. And I'm sure everyone has this thought. He's the one creating synthetics. He's the one that created Data's daughter, or twins. And he's somewhere in the universe doing some shenanigans. So since Bruce probably created twins from a single positronic neuron of Data through fractal neuronic cloning and based it off of a painting that Data did, does that mean we're getting him back? It kind of seems like a way to bring him back, besides in Picard's dreams, which is just super sad. And I know a lot of people want to talk shit about how Data looks a little bit different and a little heavier, but one, Picard probably ages him up in his dreams to show aging along with him, and two, you're mean. Shame on you. You know what I really loved? That we introduced Dej before we knew she was a twin, and he goes to Picard, just everything inside me tells me I'm safe with you, and then she fucking dies. That was awesome.
Everything inside of me says that I'm safe with you.
Dr. Soji, Deja's twin, obviously, then meets a Romulan named Narak, who obviously wants to get close to her because he knows who she is. And they're on a Romulan site, which is actually a Borg cube, which is terrifyingly cool. Oh, here's some quick thoughts, just because I don't know where to put them, but I want to talk about them. Seeing Picard's family vineyard was really cool. I love that some Romulans Picard helped now stay with him. It's hilarious that he named his dog Number 1. I'm not overly impressed how the future is portrayed on Earth. Patrick Stewart is showing his age, and it's breaking my heart. I know Picard is 94, so seeing him slow down makes sense, even with humans living longer in their world thanks to advancements, but it's still breaking my heart. Also, there was way too much exposition in this first episode. I understand they needed to catch us up where Picard was at and why he retired from Starfleet. And I also understand that we were doing the whole showing, look, reporters, interviewers in our world are also pieces of shit and just want to provoke someone so that they can get ratings and get the juicy story, and aren't they fucking pieces of shit? And yeah, I did like Picard putting her in her place and being like, yeah, Starfleet failed those people. That was criminal to not want to go help the Romulans and just letting all those people die. Fuck you. So I probably talked way too long about this first episode. I really enjoyed it. I'm intrigued to see where it goes. I think they hooked us, at least a lot of us, well enough. And I have faith that Patrick Stewart would not have okayed a series that was subpar. But I also know a lot of things can change in the editing room. Cough, other recent movies that I won't talk about right now. So you can let me know what you thought about the first episode of Picard. Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Did you not watch it? You watched an entire video reviewing it? Like, subscribe, and let me know in the comment section down below.